What is going on, guys? In today's video, I will show you the top 5 best ranger builds in Path of Exile 2. In this build guide, I will give you a quick overview of the best setups for both ascendancies, so Deadeye and the Pathfinder. Then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it for both leveling and endgame. And then finally, we will go over the passive skill tree, attributes, your skill rotations, and even what Atlas passive should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. If you are looking for any of these builds on the website, then click my link in this video's description or the pinned comment. This setup is a very new version of one of the best builds in the game, the Lightning Arrow Deadeye. However, unlike in that build, in this one we are using the Ice Shot in the combination with the Lightning Rod and a Blink, which will give us this insane mobility and speed farming potential. What I like most about this setup is that we can simply spam one single skill and pretty much destroy tier 16 maps and reach up to 5 million DPS because of how many buffs we have working in the background. Like you can see from the gameplay, we are basically deleting enemies in split seconds. And on top of this, we can also delete bosses, by us having also a very high boss damage from using the Lightning Rod and the Orb of Storms. At some point in the later game, some lowered gear players might run into a mana problem, but lucky for us, the Ranger has many tools to address this problem. And with the optimized gear, we need nothing more than a single stat roll on our weapon or gear to completely solve this issue. So if you don't mind using only from 1 to 2 skills, and completely speed clearing through hundreds of enemies in few seconds, then let's get right into it. So let me show you the build, and for the main class, I have chosen to go with the Ranger, and our ascendancy is the Deadeye. Then for the first skill, we have the Ice Shot with the support gems such as the Primal Armament, Martial Tempo, Cold Infusion, Ricochet and the Heft. Then second, we get the Lightning Rod with a Scatter Shot, Concentrated Effect, Elemental Focus and the Close Combat. Then next we got the Orb of Storms with the Chain, Deep Freeze and the Fount of Mana. Next we have the Herald of the Thunder with the Execute and Elemental Focus. Next up we have the Herald of the Ice with the Long Shot, Cold Penetration, Magnified Effect and the Cold Mastery. Next we got Wind Dancer with the Cannibalism, Clarity and Herbalism. Next we have the Bow Shot with the Life Drain, Soul Thief, Wind Wave and the Blind. And finally for the last two we are using the Blink and the Mana Remnants with no support gems. Most of this setup is structured around using the Ice Shot and the Bow Shot to delete enemies in seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and by the way our javel placement is also important, so that's why we here have these type of lines. So then with that said, we want to start at this evasion node, and then go like this while also taking the cat-like agility. Then next we keep on going and take both of these, so master fletching and the freedom of movement. Then from here we want to go up here and then go to the left side, and then get all of these nodes. Then afterwards we circle back and now go until the end and take this feathered fletching. And from this point and onwards you can just unlock all the other nodes in whatever order you prefer. Also, when we take a look at this outline, you may think that we waste a lot of points just to get this Mind Over Matter keystone. However, this is a big part of our defense, as we are already doing insane amount of damage, mainly from our DPS nodes and the weapon and gear choices, so we can easily afford to do this. I did a lot of testing and it was very hard to survive tier 16 maps. So after I talked with a bunch of players and did testing, we figured out that going a bit overboard and taking the Mind Over Matter was a huge life changer for this specific build. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Gathering Winds, as it increases your movement and attack speed, while also giving you a huge evasion boost. Then second we get the Point Blank, which this time will increase your damage to the close proximity targets. Then next we wanna get the Endless Munitions, as it increases both your clear speed and single target damage. The Territorial is usually pretty hard, but it's definitely worth doing it as soon as you can, as this will give us a huge DPS boost. And then finally we want to get the Wind Ward, as especially when doing higher tier maps and content, you will need to get all the damage reduction that you can. Next up we have our Atlas passives. And the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. So when we start, we wanna first of all go to the right side and get all of these nodes, and then keep on going down until you get to this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. And then from this point and onwards, you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you want. But then on top of this, we have even more passives. Which order in which you unlock them doesn't really matter, so again it's up to you. And this is how it should look like for the ritual. Then next we have Delirium. Then third we have bosses, and then on top of that we have the pinnacle bosses. Then next we also have our expedition setup, and then finally our breach setup. Then in the next part we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Widow Veil Bow with insane bonus stats, which gives us from 150 to 200% increased bonus, which is gained from equipping a quiver. To be honest, this is one of the biggest reasons of how we can get to 5 million DPS, and why you can see that crazy gameplay of one-shotting enemies. However, no matter what bow you use, this build will still function, but just not to the insane level that I can. So then for the bow stats, you want to look for attack speed, critical chance bonus, lightning damage, and pretty much anything else that will boost our DPS. And then for our offhand, we got the primed quiver, which this time is quite important. So with this we get increased attack speed, and for bonus stats we want to go with adds cold damage to attacks, more accuracy, increased projectile speed, plus levels to all projectile skills, even more increased attack speed and more to dexterity. Then for the helmet we have the Expert Hunter Hood with evasion, and for more we want even more evasion and increased evasion. Then also max mana and fire and cold resistance. Then for the chest we got the Queen of the Forest with evasion, and for its stats we get increased evasion, fire, cold and lightning resistance. Also, we get increased movement speed per every 500 evasion. This is yet again the reason of why we build our evasion so high. However, again this is not required, so if you can afford this, then look for any other chest piece with similar stats. Then for the belt we have the utility belt with 20% quicker flask recovery, more evasion and max life, as well as fire and cold resistance. Then for gloves we got the Hand of the Wisdom and Action. Same thing applies, if you don't want it, then just get anything else. But if I would say to get at least one of these expensive items, then this would be the one, as because of these gloves we want to stack our intelligence or dexterity as high as possible. And then for bonus stats we want dexterity, intelligence, increased attack speed and adds lightning damage to attacks. Then for boots we're using the Expert Lizard Scale boots with evasion. And for bonus stats we get more evasion, cold and lightning resistance, as well as stun threshold. This is one of the only builds where we don't want movement speed on the boots, because our chest piece will give us movement speed from evasion, and at the same time disable any other movement speed modifier. In the endgame you will get more speed than any basic speed boots, so of course if you can then get this item, but if you can't then go with any basic chest, and then just pick the movement speed on the boots. Then for the first ring we got the Ruby ring with the fire resistance, and for more we got evasion, max mana, intelligence and increased mana regeneration rate. While for the second one we have the prismatic ring, with percentage to all elemental resistances. And for more we got increased cold damage, max mana, intelligence and lightning and chaos resistance. And then finally for the amulet we got the Crimson Amulet with the life regen per second. And for more we want max energy shield, max life, max mana, intelligence, more to all elemental resistances and chaos resistance. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap on all 4 elements. This is a starter setup, which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And as you can see from the gameplay, this is one of the easiest and simplest builds in the game. So our main rotation is just to spam the ice shot and the bow shot for easy monster kills, which are most of our targets. But then specifically for bosses you can as well place down Orb of Storms, and then spam the ice shot and the lightning rod. This will give you a great buff and insane amount of shock lightning damage for single targets. And finally, if you're low geared and run into a mana problem, especially against bosses, then try to get one Javel with mana on kill, or mana on kill from the quiver. And as well, this might sound obvious, especially at the beginning, when you might not have yet unlocked mana on kill, but if you run out of mana then just simply cast less skills. And wait, you will be doing very high damage anyways, so casting few less skills won't really impact the gameplay that much. But it may reduce your mana consumption, especially if you're under-geared or under-leveled. This setup is known as the Explosive Shot build, which, as you can see from the gameplay, can blow up and destroy a huge amount of enemies by using the Explosive Shot, However, for our playstyle to work, we will need to use the tree dragon mask, but lucky for us, this headpiece is pretty cheap and easy to acquire by just simply buying it or trading it. This build got a recent shock buff, which means that now by using the specific items, we will convert our ability to ignite with fire damage to now get a shock chance instead. And besides the explosive shot, we also have the shock burst rounds, which will be our main way to deal damage against a single target. It only will work if the target is shocked by releasing a deadly pulse that unleashes one of the craziest DPS skills currently in the game. So if you like the playstyle and you want to use one of the best meta builds that is quite easy to get, then here it is. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the ranger and our ascendancy is the dead eye. Then for the first skill we have the explosive shot, and for support gems we want to go with the scatter shot, conduction, martial tempo, fire penetration and the rising tempest. Then second we got the shock burst rounds with the concentrated effect, primal armament, lightning infusion, heft and the fresh clip. Then next we got the Herald of the Thunder with the Ice Bite, Innervate, Glaciation and the Lightning Penetration. Next we have the Herald of the Ice with Magnified Effect, Cold Infusion, Cold Penetration and Cold Mastery. Next up we have the Herald of the Ash with just the Fire Mastery. Next we got Wind Dancer with the Blind. Next we have Emergency Reload with Premeditation, Ingenuity and Persistence. And finally, for the last two, we're using the Overwhelming Presence and Voltaic Mark, with no support gems whatsoever. Most of this build is structured around using the explosive shot to delete enemies in seconds, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their size and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guide. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this projectile damage node, and then go like this while taking the honed instincts and the vile wounds. Then now keep on going until you get both of these, so escape velocity and the freedom of movement. Then from here we want to continue our way up until this point and then take this maiming strike. Then from here we want to circle back a little, and from this point just go to the left side, and just by following this path you pretty much want to get this entire place. And then from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of these nodes that we got are very useful, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority, as they're the most important ones to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. Also, as far as attributes go, you just simply want to fulfill your attribute requirements for gear and skill gems, and then after that spend the rest of your leftover attributes into more dexterity. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascendancy build, this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Gathering Winds, as it increases your movement speed and attack speed, while also giving you a huge evasion boost. Then second we get the Point Blank, which this time will increase your damage to close proximity targets. Then next we want to get the Endless Munitions, as it increases both your clear speed and the single target damage. The third trial is usually pretty hard, but this is definitely worth doing as soon as you can, as this will give you a huge DPS boost. And then finally we want to get the Wind Ward, as especially when you're doing higher tier maps and content, you will need all the damage reduction that you can get. Next up we have our Atlas passives. And the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or in rituals. So when we start we wanna first of all go to the left side and get all of these nodes, and then keep going down until you get to this keystone called the Deadly Evolution. And then from this point and onwards you can unlock the rest of the nodes in whatever order you want. But then on top of this we have even more passives, which in order you unlock them doesn't really matter. So this time it's again up to you. And this is how it should look like for the ritual. Then next we have Delirium. Then third we have bosses. And then on top of that we have the pinnacle bosses. Then next we also have our expedition setup. And then finally our breach setup. Now let's move over to the next part, which is the gear. And the weapon of our choice is the Expert Forlorn Crossbow with a crit and weapon speed. And for the main bonus stats we want to aim for increased physical damage, adds more to physical damage, and loads from 1 to 2 more additional bolts, which is also a big DPS increase. Our crossbow is pretty much the core of this build, so we want to get as high physical DPS and as quick reload speed as possible. Then for the helmet we have the 3 dragons with evasion and energy shield. And for the base extra stats we get increased evasion and energy shield, more to all elemental resistances, And most importantly, our fire, cold and lightning damage hits will now contribute to the shock chance. As I said previously, the Tree Dragon Mask is the main component that holds this build together, and without it this is not very optimized, which means that you wanna definitely get this item before starting your endgame journey. Then for the chest we have the Expert Serpent Scale coat with a lot of evasion, and for more we want to get even more evasion, then max life and fire and chaos resistance. Then for belt we have the Ornate belt with reduced charm charges. And for more we want max life, evasion, +2 charm slots and fire resistance. Then for the gloves we got the Expert Spin Bracers with the evasion, and for more we need adds to physical damage to attacks, then max life, also increased attack speed and chaos resistance. Then for boots we're using the Expert Lizard Scale boots with increased movement speed, evasion, max life, cold and lightning resistance. And then for our first and second ring we got the same thing, which is the Prismatic ring with percentage to all elemental resistances, and for more we got max life, max mana, and fire and cold resistance. And then finally for the amulet we have the Ember amulet with strength, more to spirit, max life and chaos resistance. No matter which gear you choose, just at least try to get 75% resistance cap. This is a starter setup, which would be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. So we want to start our highest damage rotation by first of all activating the Voltaic Mark for its curse. Then next we use the Explosive Shot, which will build up the shock, and then afterwards we use the Shock Burst rounds. After we got that shock, and then from here we can even use the Emergency Reload for more buffs. And then from this point, if the enemy is still breathing, then we can even use the Explosive Shot to build up the same shock again. And then finally use the Shock Burst to repeat the same rotation, and that's about it. Our main objective in the gameplay is to use the Explosive Shot throughout the fight to annihilate packs of monsters, especially in early game when it's very hard to take a hit on an evasion based character. And then lastly, against bosses, first we use the Voltaic Mark, followed by the Explosive Shot until the target is shocked, and once shocked we start destroying the boss with the Shock Burst rounds. This also will freeze the boss, because the Tree Dragon Mask will convert the shock chance of the lightning skills to the freeze chance. And after the Shock Burst round is almost empty, you then want to use the Emergency Reload to instantly reset it and get a huge damage boost. This setup is known as the Lightning Arrow build, which is currently one of the best and fastest setups that you can use to farm maps and other endgame content. Like you can see from the gameplay, we are basically deleting enemies in split seconds. And on top of this, we can also delete bosses, by us having also a very high boss damage by using the Cast on Shock and the Ball Lightning. At some point in the later game, some lowered gear players might run into a mana problem, but lucky for us, the Ranger has many tools to address this problem. And with the optimized gear, we need nothing more than a single stat roll on our weapon or the gear to completely solve this issue. So if you like using only 2 skills and completely speedrunning through the hundreds of enemies in few seconds, then let's get right into it. So let me show you the build, and for the main class I have chosen to go with the Ranger, and our ascendancy is the Deadeye. Then for the first skill we have the Lightning Arrow, and for our support gems we want to go with the Martial Tempo, Ice Bite, Cold Infusion and Primal Armament. Then second we got the Lightning Rod with the Scatter Shot, Concentrated Effect, Conduction and the Rising Tempest. Next we got the Herald of the Thunder with the Lightning Infusion and the Lightning Penetration. Next we have the Herald of the Ice with Cold Penetration, Magnified Effect and the Elemental Focus. Next we are also using the Wind Dancer with the Blind. Next we have the Orb of Storm with the Chain, Unleash, Overabundance and the Persistence. Then we got the Cast on Shock with the Ball Lightning, Deceleration, Inspiration and the Impetus. And finally for the last one we got the Voltaic Mark with Persistence, Inner Weight and the Lightning Mastery. Most of this build is structured around using the Lightning Arrow and the Lightning Rod to instantly shot his DPS lightning projectiles, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their area and damage, while the rest are powerful buffs and utility skills that usually get activated in the background. Next up we have our passive tree, and if you are interested in a full in-depth guide on how it works, then check out my beginner guides. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this projectile damage node and go like this until we get the Honed Instincts and the Vile Wounds. Then next we want to keep on moving to get this entire thing, and mainly we want to aim for the Master Fletching and disharness the elements. Then from here we want to get back at this point and then keep going down like this, and then when the path splits, then now we want to go to the left bottom. So let's make our way like this, and then finally we want to get both these lightning nodes, so the lightning rod and the flash storm. Then from here we want to circle back and go to the top right side, and get the mental toughness and the other mana regen nodes, that will help us with the potentially low mana. And then finally from this point and onwards you can unlock all the rest of the nodes in whatever order you prefer. All of the nodes that we got are important, but the ones I mentioned have the top priority as they're the most important to acquire early on in the game, to make our build functional, and then in the late game to make it even more powerful. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascendancy build this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the Gathering Winds. Then second, get the projectile proximity specialization with the point blank option. Then next, get the endless munition, and then finally we want to select the wind ward. And also preferably we want to get 1 mana on kill Jewel, or at least get the mana on kill on the quiver. And next up we have our Atlas passives. And the general idea behind this is to aim for bonus passives that spawn a lot of grouped up monsters, such as in expeditions or the rituals. Also, our Lightning Ranger has a very strong single target damage, so farming boss maps or essences is also a good option. So when we start we want to first of all get to the bottom left side like this, then now we want to go to the top right side and get all of these passives. And then finally from here you want to go to the top middle part and get the rest of the passives in no particular order. Then next we have our gear, and for this build you only need about 100 spirit. The weapon of our choice is the expert dual string bow. This is the most important item that we have, so look for the highest cold or physical damage bow that you can get your hands on. Also, lightning damage is a good option as well, but for sure you want to avoid fire damage. Generally, I would value additional arrows over a 50 DPS increase, so keep that in mind. And then for bonus stats, we want the bow attacks to fire an additional arrow, then physical damage increase, more lightning damage, or plus extra levels to all projectile skills. Next we also have the offhand called the primed quiver, and good stats to look for are the cold or physical damage, increased damage with the bow skills, attack speed, dexterity, projectile speed, level of all projectile skills, and mana on kill. And generally this is the place where we want at least one source of mana on kill, to reduce our low mana against bosses. Then for the helmet we have the advanced Scaled Helm with armor and evasion. And for bonus stats we want more armor, more evasion, max life and cold resistance. And it's very important to reach 75% resistance in all 4 stats, so try to get as much of that as possible on your gear. Then for the chest we have the expert studded vest with a lot of evasion. Yes, I chose to sacrifice life for more evasion, and this will give us a lot more utility, especially in the endgame. And then for the extra stats we want max life, more evasion and fire resistance. Then for the belt we have the utility belt that recovers our flask 20% quicker. And then for bonus stats we want more max life, and any other resistances like lightning or chaos. Then for gloves we got the advanced doubled gauntlets with armor and evasion. And for extras we want max life, chaos and fire resistance. Then for boots we are using the advanced embossed boots with evasion. And for more we 100% want to get as high movement speed as possible and also cold resistance. Then for our first ring we got the Thief's Torment. And here I want to give you a huge disclaimer. So if at the start of this build you're struggling with mana, then this one ring can completely solve it, because of the 15 mana gain per each hit, so we will basically never run out of it. But as it is a quite expensive ring, so you can go for other rings as well. This Thief's Torment is only needed for bosses, so usually use different rings for mapping. It's the only source of mana on hit in the game, so without the ring you will instantly run out of mana on the boss. You don't really need it in the lower tier Waystones, but once you get to the top tier, then you will most likely need it. So try to get it before most other players find out about it. And then on the second one we got the Sapphire Ring with cold resistance. And for more bonuses we want max life and chaos resistance. And then finally for the amulet we got the Stellar Amulet, which gives us more to all attributes. And for extras we want to get more to spirit. Overall for this build I recommend to get 95 intelligence for the ball lightning and the cast on shock. Plus I have a level 11 gem for the ball lightning and also a level 11 for a cast on shock. Of course these gems can be a higher level, but then it will require more intelligence, so getting them to level 11 I found it to work the best. And now finally let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And as you can see from the gameplay, this is one of the most powerful but easiest and simplest builds in the game. So our main rotation is just to use the lightning arrow and the lightning rod, or easy to kill monsters, which are most of our targets. But then specifically for bosses, you can then place down the Orb of Storms, and spam the lightning rod and cast the volatile mark. This will give you a great buff against the boss and insane amount of shock lightning damage for the single target. On top of this, if you're a new player, then some mechanics may seem a bit weird, so let me quickly explain. If your lightning rod or the cast on shock is not working, then either way try to self-cast the volatile mark, and then place down the Orb of Storms, or perhaps after your volatile mark is out and the Orb of Storms, then only then start spamming the lightning rod. Also, if you're low level and you can't use the cast on shock, then you need to put a skill gem in that skill, or the game itself won't allow you to get the effect. And then finally, if you're low geared and run into a mana problem, especially against bosses, then try to get one jewel with the mana on kill, or mana on kill from our quiver. For most players, there's no real way to solve mana for bosses, until you get the Thieves' Torment ring, but using simple strategies may help as well. This might sound obvious, especially at the beginning, when you might not have yet unlocked the mana on kill. But if you run out of mana, then you just simply wanna cast less skills and wait. You'll be doing very high damage anyways, so casting few less skills won't really impact the gameplay that much. But it may reduce your mana consumption, especially if you're undergeared or underleveled. This setup is known as the Toxic Poison build, as we are going to be dealing insane amount of damage with just the poison effects alone. Our playstyle is structured around specializing in dealing damage almost exclusively by spamming the gas and divine arrow, as because of our skill tree and the gear, we are going to be deleting trash enemies in split seconds. However, what I really like about this build is the fast speed farming potential, as you can keep moving while dealing a lot of damage over time. And then for the rares and bosses, we will use the Plague Barrier and the Toxic Growth, which will annihilate anyone that stands in our way. If you want to stack as high poison as possible and use one of the highest DPS builds currently in the game, then let's get right into it. So with all of this said, let me show you the build. And for the main class, we have chosen to go with the Ranger, and our ascendancy is the Pathfinder. Then for the first skill, we have the Gas Arrow, with support gems such as the Armor Explosion, Corrosion and Persistence. Then second, we got the Toxic Growth, with Martial Tempo, Soul Thief and the Concentrated Effect. Then next we got Divine Arrow, with Bursting Plague, Comorbidity and the Long Shot. Then next we have the Rain of Arrows, with Withering Touch, Maim and the Envenom. Next we are also using the Plague Barrier with Expanse, Magnified Effect and the Chaos Mastery. And then finally for the last one we got the Wind Dancer with Clarity, Cannibalism and Precision. Next up we have our passive skill tree. For most new players this can seem extremely daunting, so let me quickly explain. In very simple terms, every character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more for completing certain quests. We have 3 node types, so small nodes, notable nodes and keystones. All of them act as checkpoints that you want to reach and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and we want to start at this evasion node. Then go like this and unlock all of these 3 nodes, so Blur, Eagle Eye and the Honed Instincts. Then now keep going down here and then take the right and unlock this Harness the Elements. This will make that never poison effects can pop by themselves and do big damage. So then from here we want to keep on stacking the evasion and poison duration and damage. So then we go back to the previous path and keep going down, while on our way getting most of this circle and both of these 2 nodes called the escape velocity and the freedom of movement. And now finally from here we want to keep on going forwards and get these 2 last nodes. And then from here the priority doesn't really matter that much, as you should be already doing huge amount of poison damage. So from here unlock all the other nodes in whatever order you want. Also, in the future, I'm thinking to maybe invest some points into the Acrobatics Keystone, which will give me insane amount of evasion, but I still need to test this theory, so I'll let you know if I make an updated video. And then now, let's go all the way to the middle again, and for our Ascension setup, this is what we have. So at the beginning, you want to unlock the Contagious Contamination, then next get the Overwhelming Toxicity, then now get the Running Assault, and then finally the Relentless Pursuit. If we compare both of the Path of Exile games, then POE 2 is much slower, so getting this movement speed in the endgame will make this build even more powerful than it is right now. And to simplify my decision making and so you could easier understand, then we wanted to prioritize the Blur, Honed Instincts, Heavy Ammunition and the Crippling Toxins, as they will give us the biggest poison upgrades to not only damage but duration as well, so we wanted to get them first. And then for the rest we invested into more stacking evasion, more skill effect duration and just more damage, which will make our poison last forever. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the expert short bow with a crit chance, and for the extra stats that we want to try to get are increased physical damage, increased accuracy and increased attack speed. And also, as the bow is a one-handed weapon, so we wanted to get the fire quiver, with the addition that adds 3 to 5 more damage to attacks. And for extra stats, we want to get things like the physical damage, increased damage with the bow skills, and increased attack speed. Then for the helmet we have the advanced guarded helm with armor and evasion. For extras we want to get more evasion, more maximum life and reduced attribute requirements. Then for chest we have the expert pathfinder coat with evasion, and for bonus stats get reduced slow on debuffs, evasion rating, max life and percentage to lightning resistance. Then for the belt we have the fine belt with maximum life and lightning resistance. Then for the gloves we got the advanced section braces with evasion, and for bonus stats get accuracy, max life and fire and cold resistance. Then for boots we're using the expert laced boots with evasion, and for extras we want to get increased movement speed, even more evasion and resistances like cold and fire. Then for first ring we got the emerald ring with a lot of accuracy and cold resistance, while on the second one we got the sapphire ring with cold resistance, maximum life and more to all attributes. And then finally for the amulet we got the gold amulet with increased rarity to items found, and for bonuses get max life, more to spirit and more to all attributes. As the game just launched, so this is a starter setup which should be more of an example of what stats and prefixes to look for. Your weapon will be the most important upgrade, so prioritize any type of flat damage or increased attack speed. And then for defenses, make sure that you're regularly updating the base type of your gear, so prioritize evasion, maximum life and any type of resistance that you can. Also, movement speed on boots is a good option as well. And now finally, let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And this is actually very straightforward. So for trash and weak enemies, just use the gas and vine arrow, and this will fire toxic arrows on the ground, which will all do poison damage over time, and then even detonate, which will cause you to deal even more damage. Then second, for bosses, rare enemies or just hard packs, this time we want to spam the toxic growth into a single gas cloud, and use plague barrier as needed or just to detonate the toxic growth. This rotation again will shoot toxins on the ground that explode and deal poison damage, but you don't have to wait for that delay by using the plague barrier, and you need to do all of this into a single gas cloud, which you can create by using the gas arrow and increase your damage even more. And then finally, the rain of arrows and the wind dancer are just meant for utility, so use them depending on the fight. This setup is the gas grenade build that has very high movement speed, along with the lightning warp to teleport around even faster. So we will be exploding our gas grenades with explosive shot for large amounts of damage. That will help us to clear a big amount of groups in just few seconds. By using specific gear and building our skill tree around nodes like the cluster bombs, point blank and many more, will enable us to upgrade our grenades and projectile area and damage. So if you're ready to explode anyone and everyone that stands in our way, then let's get right into it. So with all of this said, let me show you the build. For the main class we have chosen to go with the ranger, and our ascendancy is the Deadeye. Then for the first skill we have the explosive shot, with support gems such as the double barrel, scatter shot and the nimble reload. Then second we got the gas grenade with the fire infusion, inspiration and the martial tempo. Then next we got the oil grenade with encumbrance and the strip away. Then next we have wind dancer with the clarity and precision. Next we are using the blasphemy with the flammability and the magnified effect. Next we are using the lightning warp with the overcharge and the persistence. And finally for the last one we got the ball lightning with the acceleration and the arcane tempo. Most of this setup is structured around using both of the grenade skills, so we use gems and skills that will support and increase their area and damage, while the rest are powerful filler skills for utility that we can use until our main rotation comes back up. Next, let's quickly take a look at our leveling setup, which we need to use up until about level 25, where we get the gas grenade skill and unlock the cluster bombs node in the skill tree. So first off we have the lightning arrow with the martial tempo and the lightning infusion. Then next we got the lightning rod with the scatter shot and the magnified effect. Then next we also got the escape shot with concentrated effect and the deep freeze. And then finally we are using the wind dancer with the clarity and precision. This is your basic setup up until we increase our explosive damage. In the early stages of progression we are using the lightning arrow and the rod for AoE damage, while the escape shot and the wind dancer are for mobility and utility. Next up we have our passive skill tree. For most new players this can seem extremely daunting, so let me quickly explain. In very simple terms, every character is granted one passive skill point every time they level up, and are sometimes even granted more for completing certain quests. We have 3 node types, so small nodes, notable nodes and keystones, and all of them act as checkpoints that you want to reach and make a path to build around a specific playstyle. So let's take a look at our setup, and our main goal at the start is to reach this cluster bombs node. So we start here at the first evasion node, and make our way like this to the left, while on our way grabbing the blur, remoteless and the volatile cataclysm. And then from here we keep going down until we reach the circle and then get our cluster bombs. This node is very important to get early on, as this is exactly what allows the Deadeye to start scaling well enough to use over other beginner skills. So then when that is done, then now we want to circle back to the beginning and get most of these nodes like the Honed Instincts, Clean Shot and the Vile Wounds. Then again let's go back on where we left off and get this entire circle while also grabbing this Overwhelm. And now finally from here just make your way all the way to the end, and the order in which you do it doesn't really matter, as long as you follow this path. And then now let's go all the way to the middle again, and for Ascension setup this is what we have. So at the beginning you want to unlock the projectile proximity specialization and choose this point blank version. Then now take this endless munitions, and then from here just unlock this whole entire path. Next we have our gear. The weapon of our choice is the Advanced Bombard Crossbow with increased crit chance and speed. And for the bonus stats you want to get increased percentage to the physical damage, more accuracy, added physical damage and more levels to all projectile skills. Then for the helmet we have the Advanced Scout Helm with armor and evasion. And for the extras we want more armor, max life and cold resistance. Then for chest we have the Advanced Cloaked Mail with armor and evasion. For extras we want to get more armor, more evasion and max life and more to spirit. Then for the belt we have the mail belt with reduced flask charges. And for bonuses we want max life and any type of resistance like fire or cold. Then for the gloves we got the advanced double gauntlets with armor and evasion. For extras we want to get max life and fire or cold resistance. Then for boots we are using the advanced brace sabotants with armor and evasion. And for the extras we want to get increased movement speed, max life and cold resistance. Then for the first ring we got the golden hoop with more to all attributes, and for extras we want to get max life and lightning resistance. While on the second one we got the same golden hoop, but this time with max life and cold and fire resistance. Both of these rings are very OP because of the base bonus to all attributes. And then finally for the amulet we got the lapis amulet with more to intelligence and bonus levels for all projectile skills. And now finally let's quickly take a look at how this build will work. And for this one we don't have a long rotation, as most of our playstyle is just built around 2 powerful skills. So first off, while killing regular monsters, you want to combo your gas grenades once or twice into the explosive shot to detonate the gas for multiple explosions. Most of the enemies will die to a single gas grenade combo, but we can also use the oil grenade against magic and rare monsters to apply the exposure debuff, which drastically will reduce their fire resistance. So subsequently, the second rotation is to now use the blasphemy, then the gas grenade, then the explosive shot, and then finally also add the oil grenade. For bosses, we want to also utilize the oil grenade and flammability to reduce the fire resistance even further. So that's why we use the blasphemy, which is linked to the flammability, and this causes it to always affect nearby enemies without any cast or time delay. And then finally, make sure that you're getting the inspiration support gem as soon as possible, because the gas grenade has a very high mana cost that can be hard to sustain. So the support inspiration gem will help us with that. Plus, don't forget about using the mana flask when you're at low levels and haven't fully built this setup. Let me know what you think about this build in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, then you definitely don't want to miss my previous top 3 build video, where I showed even more powerful builds. So click the screen now and I'll see you in the next one.